Good morning. When Pastor brought this up to me, it gave some, you've all seen the emails and such that, your favorite Bible stories or your favorite verse or things that have made a difference to you in your life. And I think my favorite Bible story has to be Job. Job is widely considered to be one of the most ancient stories in the Bible. And at that time, that far early in history, for it to culminate in a man being able to say, I know that my Redeemer lives, is an amazing thing to me. My favorite verse is very simple. It says, I can do all things through him who gives me strength. And as you live through your life, and it happens in my life, that no matter where you go, what you do, where you travel, being there makes a difference. It may not be a huge difference, but it makes a difference. And a story that I used to live in a little town called Morocco, Indiana. It's the only town of Morocco in the world. There used to be a city, but it's no longer called Morocco. And it's a tiny little town, and it was founded in 1851. And the apocryphal story is that men were clearing a road in town, which originally was just 4 blocks. And a fellow rode up on horseback and asked where he was. And they explained, he said, well, I'm trying to get to Kankakee. They said, well, it's another day's ride over that direction. And he said, well, since it's late, is there a place I can get a room or a bed or whatever? They said, yeah, we have a little boarding house down here. So it was very close. So rather than remount on his horse, he took off leading his horse, and he walked with very long, rapid strides. And one of the guys on the street said, man, that guy's quite a walker, isn't he? Well, that street is now Walker Street. And he was wearing a pair of knee-high riding boots, black riding boots, that were trimmed with red leather around the top. And that leather was cured in the style known as Morocco leather. Now, no one knows who this person may have been, but he named a street and a town. Simply his being there made a difference. And your being where you are at any time makes a difference, and you rarely know it. Once in a while, you may be gifted to know what had happened. And I've seen this happen in my life a couple of times. One time, while I lived in Morocco, as a matter of fact, I had made friends with some people who lived a bit north of me. They had 2 young boys, and we became very good friends. We visited each other for dinner. We would just be over at each other's house or whatever. And at one time, there was a big hoorah with the teachers in that area. Now, at that time, Indiana had a no-strike law for teachers, but it was going to be pushed. There were people came in from outside. It was going to be a big test case. And I was hired as a substitute teacher. Now, yeah, those of you who know me might be a little worried that I was teaching 6th grade. But 6th grade students are funny animals. They're just coming into the fact that they're actually in a world that is far beyond them. Well, my friend's son, oldest son, happened to be in my class. And he had cystic fibrosis, which at that time did not have a very lengthy expectation of life. And there was a girl in the class, and he and she had known each other ever since kindergarten, and they were a bit sweet on each other. And one day, as 12-year-old girls might say, she goes up to him and said, I'm going to marry you. And he kind of laughed it off a little bit. And she went home that night, and she was talking to her mom, and she said, Mom, I'm going to marry Bradley. And her mother said, no, I wouldn't plan on this because he likely won't live to be 20. So the next day, she comes to school, embraces him in the hallway, and says, Bradley, why didn't you tell me you're dying? At 12, you are now faced with your own mortality. He was devastated. And he came to me because, at that time, I was not Mr. Boney, substitute teacher. I was Dave, family friend. And he felt comfortable coming to me in his devastated state. And we were able to sit and talk, and we talked with his parents, and then the parents talked with the parents, and it was able to be worked out. The next day, the strike settled, and I was no longer there. And it struck me that I was there for one reason and one reason only, because this horrible thing happened to a young man who had enough respect and faith in me that he could come to me with this problem. Like I said, you rarely get to see these things happen, but I've been blessed to see this. One other circumstance happened. It was on the road. And I had just cleared a slight rise in the road, and as I came over, I saw in the ditch a little Ford Escort, and in the field next to it was a semi upside down. So I stopped. I can't see something like that and not stop. And I noticed that the front end of the car was just about taken off the car. And it had happened so soon before I got there that the fuel was yet to begin running out of the tanks on the truck. This is how soon it happened. And so I stopped, and there was a girl lying in the ditch, half underneath her car, and I figured I've got to do something. A guy came the other way, happened to have a cell phone. This is in the very early days of cell phones. And he was able to call in and get the police and everyone notified. In the meantime, I drove a service truck. I used to be a field trainer, and I had a bunch of paper towels and such in the truck. I even had a tarp. And the middle of July, it was hotter than blazes out there. And I put the tarp up over the car so this young lady would be in the shade at least. And I took paper towels and I covered the worst of her wounds to protect them from dirt and dust and all this other stuff. Finally, a squad car gets there, and I was wearing my uniform, which was a tan shirt and brown Levi's. And he said, "You look like you're wearing the uniform. Could you do me a favor? Direct traffic." So I began directing traffic. And it kind of struck me that, like Liam Neeson might have said, you know, I had a very particular set of skills and circumstances at my disposal that day. And I think that they were given to me at that time for a reason. Paramedics get there, they're working, trying to get this girl out and get her stabilized. And all of a sudden I heard one say, "We've got to go back." And another one said, "Why?" I said, "We forgot the jaws." You know what the jaws are, the jaws of life that they use to remove parts of cars when they couldn't get the girl out from underneath the car because the door was jammed about a third of the way open, and they didn't have clearance to get through. These are trained professionals. As I said, God will give you strength to do what you need to do. And I have very little patience with things of that nature. And I said, "Can I help?" And they said, "Well, we kind of doubt it." And I said, "Well, let me try." And I grabbed the hinge of the door and I folded the door back against the fender. And the one paramedic looked up and said, "Gee, thanks." And they got this. I was put there, I think, for that reason. I think that God puts you where you need to be, even if you don't want it, even if you don't know it. You are put where you need to be. And I cannot physically destroy a piece of metal like that. I don't have that capability in me. But God gave me that ability. And I truly believe that no matter what you do, no matter where you go, God is with you, will guide you where you need to be guided, and will give you that particular set of skills that you need. So from Job being able to say, "I know that my Redeemer lived, which has lived with me since I was a child, and I can do all things through him who gives me strength." And I've been fortunate to see that. And I'm sure there's others I've never, ever seen. But trust me, it will be there, and you do make a difference. Thank you.